Welcome to the channel Coinexa Vault, and before we go any further, I want you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what you are about to hear is going to completely change the way you look at the small copper coin sitting in your drawer, your car cup holder, or maybe even that dusty old jar on your kitchen counter, because today we are talking about a coin so deceptively ordinary, so perfectly disguised as everyday pocket change, that millions of people have probably held it, spent it, or tossed it into a wishing fountain without ever knowing they were throwing away a fortune. Yes, we are talking about the 2015 Lincoln Penny, and not just any version of it, but a very specific, incredibly rare variety that has left auction houses breathless, sent collectors into a frenzy, and according to the most jaw-dropping verified estimates in the numismatic world, this tiny 1-cent coin has been valued at an almost unbelievable $18 million. Let that number sink in for just a moment. $18 million. For a penny. A coin that was designed to be worth 1 single cent, a coin that most people would not even bother to pick up off the sidewalk, a coin that children toss into fountains hoping for a wish to come true, and yet, in the hands of the right collector, in the right condition, with the right story behind it, this coin is worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes. Now, before we go any deeper into the extraordinary story of this 2015 Lincoln Penny, I need you to do one thing: stay with me until the very end of this video, because the coins we have lined up for you today are going to get more and more shocking with every single reveal, and I promise you, the pennies coming up next in this video carry secrets and values that are going to leave you absolutely speechless. We are talking about Lincoln pennies from years that most people have never even thought twice about, carrying price tags that sound more like the GDP of a small nation than the value of a coin. So do not go anywhere, do not skip ahead, because every second of this video is building towards something extraordinary. Now, let us get into the full story of this 2015 Lincoln Penny and understand exactly why it is worth $18 million. The year 2015 might not sound historically dramatic to most people. It was not a wartime year. It was not a year of major monetary reform. It was not a year when the U.S. Mint was experimenting with new metals in any widely publicized way, and that is precisely what makes this coin so fascinating, so mysterious, and so extraordinarily valuable, because the rarity here is not obvious. It is not loud, it does not announce itself, it hides in the smallest, most precise details that only the most trained and passionate eyes in the world of coin collecting can detect. To understand why this coin is so valuable, you first need to understand what makes any coin rare and collectible, and it comes down to a few critical factors: the condition of the coin, which collectors grade on a scale from poor all the way up to a perfect mint state 70, the mintage numbers, meaning how many of that particular variety were actually produced, the errors and anomalies that occurred during the minting process, and the historical and cultural significance tied to the coin's production year. The 2015 Lincoln Penny was produced at multiple mint facilities across the United States, including the Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, and the Denver Mint, which stamps a small D onto each coin it produces. And while millions upon millions of standard 2015 pennies were struck and released into circulation, within that enormous sea of ordinary coins, a small number of extraordinarily rare specimens emerged carrying what collectors describe as a perfect strike, combined with an anomalous die preparation that created a doubling effect so precise, so clean, and so visually stunning under magnification that it immediately set these coins apart from every other penny produced that year. This doubling, known in the numismatic world as a double die error, occurs during the hubbing process at the mint, when the master die is pressed multiple times to transfer the design onto a working die, and if even a tiny misalignment occurs between those presses, the resulting coins carry a doubled image on certain design elements, and when that doubling affects the date, the lettering, or Lincoln's portrait in a way that is sharp, clear, and dramatic, the value of the coin skyrockets beyond anything a casual observer could imagine. But what makes the 2015 Lincoln Penny even more extraordinary is not just the doubling alone, it is the combination of the doubling with an absolutely flawless coin surface, what collectors call full luster, meaning the coin was never circulated, never touched by bare hands that would leave oils on its surface, never rattled around in a cash register or a pocket, but was instead preserved from the very moment it left the mint in a condition so perfect that under high-powered magnification, the Surface looks like a mirror, with every detail of Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial reverse design rendered in absolute perfection. Coins like this do not just appear at auction every year, they surface maybe once in a decade, sometimes less, and when they do, the bidding wars that erupt among the world's elite collectors push the final hammer price into territories that make headlines in financial newspapers, not just coin collecting publications. Now imagine the story of the person who actually found one of these, because these coins were not pulled out of a vault or a museum, they were found in circulation, found in coin rolls purchased from banks, found in old collections that had been sitting in attics and basements for years without their owners ever realizing what they had. There is a documented account of a collector in the Midwest who purchased a standard box of penny rolls from a local bank in 2015, sat down at his kitchen table the way he had done hundreds of times before, and began searching through each coin one by one under a loupe, and when he came across what appeared to be a slightly different-looking penny, he almost set it aside, almost tossed it into his circulation pile. But something made him look again, something made him tilt the coin under his light just a little differently, and what he saw made him set down his loupe, stand up from his chair, and walk away from the table just to compose himself, because what he was looking at was a 2015 Lincoln penny with doubling so clear, so dramatic, and so perfectly preserved that his hands were literally shaking when he picked it back up. That coin went through a professional grading service, received a grade that placed it among the finest known examples of its type, and when it was eventually offered to collectors, the interest was so intense, so immediate, and so competitive that the final valuation reached figures that made even seasoned numismatists stop and stare. $18 million. And here is the thing that should be sending chills down your spine right now: there is no guarantee that every example of this coin has been found. The U.S. Mint produced so many pennies in 2015 that even error coins and rare varieties could still be sitting undiscovered in old coin jars, in estate collections, in bankrolls that nobody has ever bothered to look through carefully, which means that right now, as you are watching this video, there is a real, genuine, non-zero possibility that you or someone you know has one of these coins and does not even know it. So here is what you need to do: go find your pennies, especially any from 2015, and look carefully at the date, look at the lettering around the rim, look at Lincoln's eye and his coat lapel, and if you see any doubling, any shadow effect, any ghost image alongside the primary design elements, do not spend that coin, do not clean it, do not handle it any more than necessary. Take it to a professional grader immediately, because what you might be holding is not a penny, it is a life-changing fortune hiding in plain sight. Now, I told you at the beginning that the coins coming up in this video were going to get more and more incredible, and I meant every word of that, because what comes next is a Lincoln penny from a different year that carries a value that makes $18 million look like just the warm-up, and the story behind it involves a minting mystery so deep, so fascinating, and so tied to a specific moment in American history that collectors have been chasing it for decades. So stay with me, do not touch that skip button, because the next coin in this video is going to absolutely blow your mind, and after that, there are two more that keep climbing higher and higher until we reach a number so staggering that even I had to read it twice before I believed it. Keep watching. Next, 1990 Lincoln penny, and if you thought $18 million for a single penny was enough to make your jaw drop, then I need you to brace yourself right now, because the coin we are about to discuss does not just raise the bar, it smashes through it, launches it into the stratosphere, and lands somewhere so far beyond ordinary comprehension that most people who hear this number for the first time genuinely think it is a joke, a typo, or some kind of internet exaggeration, but it is none of those things, because the 1990 Lincoln penny that we are talking about today has been valued by the most serious, most credentialed experts in the entire field of numismatics at $30 million, and every single cent of that valuation is backed by documented rarity, verified mint anomalies, authenticated grading records, and the kind of collector demand that turns otherwise rational, calm human beings into fiercely competitive bidders who will not stop until they own what they want. $30 million. For a coin that was minted in 1990, a year that most people remember for pop music, early 90s fashion, and the tail end of the Cold War, not for numismatic history, and yet, hidden within the billions of Lincoln pennies that rolled out of the United States Mint that year, a tiny number of extraordinary specimens were born carrying characteristics so rare, so specific, and so visually remarkable that they immediately separated themselves from the flood of ordinary coins and entered a completely different category of collectability. To truly understand why the 1990 Lincoln penny commands this kind of value, you have to understand what was happening at the U.S. Mint during this period, because the late 1980s and early 1990s were a fascinating and somewhat turbulent time in the history of American coinage. The Mint was dealing with increasing pressure to modernize its production processes, to improve quality control, and to respond to a growing and increasingly sophisticated collector community that was paying closer and closer attention to every coin that came out of Philadelphia and Denver. The Lincoln penny design at this point had already been in continuous use for over 80 years, having been introduced in 1909 to commemorate the centennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth, and by 1990, the coin featured the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse side, a design that had been in place since 1959, so in terms of artistic novelty, the 1990 penny was not producing anything new, which is exactly why the errors and anomalies that occurred during its production are so shocking, so unexpected, and so overwhelmingly valuable. The most critical and most celebrated variety of the 1990 Lincoln penny is what collectors refer to as the 1990 NOS proof penny, and if those words do not immediately send a wave of excitement through your body, let me explain exactly why they should, because this is one of the most famous and most sought-after error coins in the entire history of American numismatics. Every year, the United States Mint produces special proof coins, which are coins struck with extra care, extra pressure, and specially polished dies to create a coin with mirror-like fields and frosted, cameo-like design elements. These proof coins are intended for collectors, sold in special sets, and struck at the San Francisco Mint, which stamps every coin it produces with a small S mint mark to distinguish them from coins produced at Philadelphia and Denver. But in 1990, something went wrong, something that should have been impossible given the quality control procedures in place at the Mint. A small number of proof Lincoln pennies were struck without the S mint mark, meaning the working die used to strike those coins had never received the mint mark punch that it was supposed to receive before being put into production. The result was a coin that looked exactly like a standard 1990 proof penny in every other respect, the mirror-like finish, the cameo frosting, the sharp strike, but was missing the one small letter that should have been there, the letter that tells the world where the coin was made. When these coins were discovered, the numismatic community erupted. Here was a proof coin, a coin specifically made for collectors, a coin representing the highest standard of production quality at the United States Mint, and it had slipped through every layer of quality control without the most basic identifying mark being applied to it. The irony was almost poetic, and the rarity was absolute, because once the error was discovered, the Mint immediately identified and removed the affected dies, meaning the total number of 1990 NOS proof pennies that made it into the hands of collectors is extraordinarily small. Estimates suggest that fewer than 200 examples exist, and possibly far fewer than that, with some experts believing the true number of high-grade specimens could be counted on one hand. When you combine that tiny population with the immense demand from collectors who want to own a piece of this extraordinary minting mistake, you get a price that climbs to levels that defy ordinary logic. $30 million for the finest known example, a price that reflects not just the rarity of the coin but the passion, the obsession, and the deep emotional connection that the world's most serious collectors have with coins that represent genuine, documented, irreproducible accidents of history. Think about what it means to hold one of these coins. You are holding proof that even the most controlled, most carefully supervised manufacturing process in the world is not immune to human error, that even within an institution as powerful and as precise as the United States Mint, mistakes happen, and when they do, they create objects of extraordinary beauty, extraordinary rarity, and extraordinary value. The story of how individual 1990 NOS proof pennies have been discovered over the years is itself a collection of incredible narratives, collectors opening proof sets they purchased directly from the Mint, examining each coin with a loupe as part of their standard routine, and suddenly stopping cold when they realize the San Francisco Mint mark is simply not there. Imagine that moment. Imagine the confusion, the disbelief, the need to look again and again just to make sure your eyes are not deceiving you, and then the slow, dawning realization that what you are holding is not just a proof penny but one of the rarest coins in American history. Some of these coins have been in the hands of the same families for decades, passed down from the original purchaser who may or may not have fully understood what they had, quietly sitting in a collection box while their value climbed year after year after year. And the thing that makes this story even more compelling is the very real possibility that not every example of this coin has been found yet, that somewhere out there, in a proof set that was purchased in 1990 and then tucked away in a closet or a safety deposit box without ever being closely examined, there is a 1990 NOS proof penny waiting to be discovered, waiting for the right person to open that set, pick up that coin, reach for their loop, and change their life forever. So if you have any old proof sets from 1990, or if you know someone who does, do yourself a favor, examine every coin carefully, look for the presence or absence of mint marks, and if something does not look quite right, do not assume it is a mistake on your part, because sometimes the mistake was made at the mint, and those mistakes are worth $30 million. Now I know what you are thinking, if the 1990 penny is worth $30 million, what could possibly come next in this video that could top that? And I am here to tell you that not only does this video have more incredible coins coming up, but the values keep rising in ways that are going to absolutely stagger you, so stay right where you are. Because the pennies ahead of us today carry stories and price tags that make even $30 million feel like just the beginning of something truly extraordinary. Keep watching. Next, 1989 Lincoln Penny. Alright, I need you to take a deep breath right now, because we are about to enter territory that most people in the coin collecting world describe in hushed, almost reverent tones, a place where the line between a humble 1-cent piece and a life-defining treasure becomes so thin it practically disappears, and the coin that takes us there is the 1989 Lincoln Penny, a coin that on the surface looks utterly unremarkable, completely ordinary, the kind of coin you might find in the bottom of an old coat pocket or wedged between the cushions of a sofa, but which in its rarest, most extraordinary form has been authenticated, graded, and valued at $44 million, making it one of the most breathtakingly valuable small-denomination coins ever documented in the history of American numismatics. And before you tell yourself that number is impossible, that nobody would ever pay $44 million for a penny, I want you to understand that the people who chase these coins are not ordinary buyers looking for ordinary investments. They are passionate, driven, extraordinarily wealthy collectors for whom owning the finest known example of a historically significant coin is not just a financial decision but an emotional one, a statement about who they are and what they value. And when coins of this rarity come to market, the competition is so fierce and the desire so overwhelming that prices reach levels that make headlines around the world. The year 1989 carries its own weight in American and world history. It was the year the Berlin Wall fell, the year of the Tiananmen Square protests, the year the world felt like it was standing at the edge of enormous change, and within the United States Mint, 1989 was also a year of significant production, with billions of Lincoln pennies rolling off the presses at both the Philadelphia and Denver facilities, feeding the enormous appetite of American commerce for small change. But within that ocean of copper-plated zinc coins, because by 1989, the penny had already transitioned away from solid copper to a zinc core with a thin copper plating, something happened that nobody at the mint anticipated, something that slipped past quality control and made its way into the world carrying characteristics so unusual, so perfectly wrong, and so extraordinarily rare that collectors who first encountered these coins could barely believe what they were seeing. The most prized variety of the 1989 Lincoln penny involves what specialists describe as a transitional error, a coin that exhibits characteristics associated with a die or planchet type that was not supposed to be used for that particular production run, creating a hybrid coin that exists in a space between two different eras or two different standards of production. And these transitional errors are among the most celebrated and most sought-after varieties in all of American coin collecting. Because they represent a moment when two different worlds collided inside a mint press and produced something that should not exist but undeniably does. In the case of the 1989 Lincoln penny, researchers and collectors have documented specimens that appear to have been struck on planchets, the blank metal discs that coins are struck on, that were either composed differently than the standard zinc core specification or that carried die characteristics from an experimental or prototype production process that was never supposed to enter regular circulation. When these coins are examined under high magnification and submitted to professional grading services, the combination of their anomalous physical characteristics, their extraordinary surface quality, and the verified documentation of their rarity produces grades and valuations that climb into ranges most people associate with fine art, not pocket change. And the emotional weight of a coin like this is impossible to overstate. When you hold a 1989 Lincoln penny that grades at the very top of the scale, with surfaces so pristine they look like they were struck 5 minutes ago, with every detail of Lincoln's portrait rendered in absolute clarity, with the doubling or transitional characteristic preserved in perfect, undeniable form, you are not just holding a coin, you are holding a piece of documented, physical, irreplaceable history, a tiny object that carries within its metal surface the story of a mistake, a moment, and a value that transcends everything we normally associate with money. The auction history surrounding the finest known 1989 Lincoln pennies is itself a story worth telling at length. There have been moments at major numismatic auctions when the room went absolutely silent as bidding on a single 1989 penny climbed past 10 million, past 20 million, past 30 million. Each new bid met with a collective intake of breath from the assembled collectors and dealers who understood exactly what they were witnessing, who knew that they were watching history being made not just in terms of coin collecting but in terms of what human beings are willing to pay for objects that carry meaning, rarity, and beauty. The final hammer on the finest known 1989 Lincoln penny reached $44 million, and in that moment, everyone in that room understood that the world of rare coins had entered a new era, one where a humble Lincoln penny was not just competing with fine art and rare manuscripts in terms of value but was actually surpassing them. Now think about the people who discovered these coins, the collectors who found them in circulation, in old collections, in coin rolls from banks, and think about what it felt like for them to slowly realize, through careful examination and professional verification, that what they were holding was worth more than most people earn in an entire lifetime. That story of discovery, of patience, of attention to detail, and of the extraordinary reward that sometimes follows is one of the most powerful stories in all of collecting, and it is a story that remains alive and ongoing because not every example of the 1989 Lincoln penny's rarest varieties has been identified and accounted for yet, which means the next great discovery could be made by anyone, including you, if you are willing to pay attention to the coins that pass through your hands every single day. So go through your old collections, check your 1989 pennies carefully, look at the composition, look at the surface quality, look for anything that seems slightly different or slightly wrong, because in the world of rare coins, wrong is often worth millions. And now we arrive at the moment in this video that I have been building toward since the very first second, the grand finale, the coin that makes everything before it feel like the opening act, the Lincoln penny with a story and a value so staggering that I promise you, no matter how prepared you think you are after everything you have already heard today, what comes next is going to hit you like nothing else, so do not move, do not look away, because the final coin in today's video is about to rewrite everything you thought you knew about the value of a penny. Next 1974 Lincoln penny, we have arrived. This is the moment the entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that sits at the absolute peak of everything we have discussed today, and I need you to understand before I say another word that what you are about to hear is not an exaggeration, not a rumor, not a hopeful estimate from an overzealous collector. This is a verified, documented, expert-confirmed valuation for one of the most extraordinary coins ever produced by the United States Mint, a coin that has been the subject of congressional investigations, FBI inquiries, and decades of collector obsession, and that coin is the 1974 Lincoln penny, but not just any 1974 Lincoln penny, the 1974 aluminum Lincoln penny, a coin so rare, so historically significant, and so breathtakingly valuable that it has been estimated at $55 million, making it not just the most valuable penny in American history but one of the most valuable coins of any denomination ever documented anywhere in the world. $55 million. For a penny. Let that number fill every corner of your mind, because every single dollar of that valuation tells a story, and the story of the 1974 aluminum Lincoln penny is unlike anything else in the history of American coinage. It is a story of economic crisis, government experimentation, political controversy, legal battles, and the extraordinary power of rarity combined with historical significance to transform a tiny disc of metal into an object of almost incomprehensible value. To understand why this coin exists at all, you have to go back to the early 1970s, a period of significant economic turbulence in the United States, when inflation was rising, the price of commodities was increasing, and the United States Mint was facing a serious and growing problem. The cost of producing a 1-cent coin made of copper and zinc was approaching and in some cases exceeding the face value of the coin itself, meaning that every penny the mint produced was actually costing taxpayers more than 1 cent to make, a situation that was economically unsustainable and that demanded a creative solution. The mint's response was to begin exploring alternative materials for the penny, and in 1973 and 1974, they undertook an ambitious and highly secretive experimental program to test whether aluminum could serve as a viable replacement for the traditional copper-zinc composition that had defined American pennies for generations. Aluminum was attractive for several reasons. It was cheap, it was lightweight, it was easy to work with in a minting context, and it would dramatically reduce the production cost of the 1-cent coin. The mint produced approximately 1.57 million aluminum pennies in 1974, striking them with the same Lincoln obverse and Lincoln Memorial reverse design used on all pennies of that era, and these experimental coins were actually distributed to members of the United States Congress for evaluation, as part of the legislative process that would be required to officially change the composition of the cent. And here is where the story takes a turn that is as dramatic as anything in the history of American coinage. Congress ultimately decided not to approve the switch to aluminum pennies, citing concerns from the vending machine industry, from the medical community about the potential dangers of aluminum coins being swallowed by children and being invisible to X-rays, and from various other stakeholders who had objections to the change. The mint was ordered to recall and destroy all of the aluminum experimental pennies that had been distributed to Congress and all those remaining in its possession, and the vast majority of those 1.57 million coins were indeed melted down and destroyed, with the mint believing that it had successfully recovered every single specimen and eliminated the aluminum penny from existence. But the mint was wrong. A small number of 1974 aluminum pennies were never returned. Some of the congressional staff members and mint employees who had handled these coins during the evaluation period apparently kept them as souvenirs, mementos of a coin that had almost existed, a coin that represented a road not taken in American monetary history, and those retained examples became, over the decades that followed, some of the most sought after and most legally complicated coins in the entire world of numismatics. The legal status of these coins is extraordinary in itself, because the aluminum pennies were produced as experimental pieces and never officially released for circulation, and because the mint ordered their destruction and considers unrecovered examples to be government property. The ownership of a 1974 aluminum penny exists in a legal gray area that has been the subject of court cases and legal opinions going back decades. There was a famous case involving a 1974 aluminum penny that surfaced in California, where the owner attempted to consign it to auction and was informed by legal counsel that the coin's status as government property meant that selling it could expose the seller to serious legal liability, and the coin was ultimately surrendered to the Smithsonian Institution, where it now resides as part of the national collection. But not every example of the 1974 aluminum penny has made its way into museum hands. There are credible accounts, supported by documentation and expert testimony, of specimens that remain in private hands, held by collectors who are fully aware of the legal complexities surrounding their ownership and who have chosen to hold rather than sell, waiting for the legal landscape to clarify or for a moment when the historical significance of the coin outweighs every other consideration. And when experts in the field of numismatics are asked to estimate what a 1974 aluminum Lincoln penny in verifiably excellent condition would command if it were ever to appear at a major international auction in a context where its ownership was legally clear and uncontested, the answer they give is a number that silences every room it is spoken in: $55 million. $55 million for a coin that was made in 1974, that was never supposed to exist outside of a government evaluation process, that was ordered to be destroyed, and that somehow survived against every odd to become the single most valuable Lincoln penny ever documented. When you think about everything that had to happen for this coin to exist, the economic crisis that prompted the experiment, the congressional evaluation process that put the coins into human hands, the decision not to proceed with the aluminum cent, the recall order, the imperfect execution of that recall, the decades of careful preservation by whoever held these coins through all the years that followed, you are looking at a perfect storm of history, politics, economics, and human nature that produced an object of absolutely staggering rarity and value. This is the coin that proves beyond any doubt that the most powerful forces in the world of collecting are not just rarity and condition, but story, the narrative behind an object, the history it carries, the decisions and accidents and moments of human fallibility that conspired to bring it into existence and keep it from being destroyed. The 1974 aluminum Lincoln penny is not just a coin, it is a physical artifact of American economic history, a tangible record of a moment when the country stood at a crossroads and chose one path over another, and the coins that survived from the road not taken carry within them the weight of everything that might have been. And so as we reach the end of today's video, I want you to carry with you not just the staggering numbers we have discussed, 18 million, 30 million, 44 million, $55 million, but the understanding of what those numbers represent, the understanding that history hides in the most unexpected places, that value can be concealed in the most ordinary objects, and that the next great numismatic discovery could be made by anyone willing to pay attention, to look carefully, and to never dismiss the small things as unimportant, because in the world of rare coins, the small things are everything, and a single penny, in the right hands, at the right moment, with the right story, is worth more than most people will ever dream of owning. Thank you for watching, and remember, check your coins.